Good afternoon. I'm Yang Yu from Tsinghua University. Today I will share with you a new type of commons, which appears to be a community governance tool in Beijing. This presentation consists of three parts. First, I will introduce the Citizen Hotline in Beijing, which is vividly called Hearing Public Voices and Response Immediately by the Grassroots Government. Later, I will summarize the previous studies of Citizen Hotline made by Chinese scholars and provide with a brand new explanation from the perspective of commons. Finally, based on traditional commons governance, I will try to make further analysis of this insight about commons. Social environment of Beijing is a crucial factor of understanding hearing public voices and response immediately. As a megacity, dramatic development of Beijing generates various disputes. Existing problems emerge with the rapid development of Beijing, which requires the improvement of grassroots governance. With the evolving information technology, Hotline has become an important tool for the government to get to know people's demands and handle social conflicts. Like the traditional hotline, citizens in Beijing can dial 12345 to complain, and the hotline operators will analyze their situation and send their demands to relevant departments. Then the hotline department sends feedback to the caller right after these problems being handled immediately. Besides, the new hotline has three features. First, hearing public voices and response immediately integrates most hotlines used in Beijing. Currently, the new hotline covers many areas such as poverty management, illegal construction, living environment, traffic management, and market management. The integrated hotline not only improves efficiency, but also enables the government to establish a database of social issues. Secondly, the new hotline takes resolution rate, and the satisfaction rate as evaluation standards. Under such pressure, government tends to respond fast and accurately. In some cases, relevant departments even took the initiative to solve common problems simulated by accumulating issues. Furthermore, compared with traditional hotline, the new hotline empowers the community organization. This change is also known as street and township whistle department check-in. When the grassroots department find that the problem cannot be solved by the community, they can send the district-level department to coordinate. Due to this system, grassroots government in Beijing has become an efficient functional unit with consistent powers and responsibilities. The city government summarized the previous process as small issues handled in community, big issues handled in street, difficult problems solved by the coordination of departments. Plenty of Chinese scholars have commented positively on the hotline. Some scholars pointed out that the hotline increases people's participation in governance and establishes a communication canal between public and government. Other researchers indicated that the government can form a database by integrating issues from the hotline, which is conducive to promoting grassroots governance. However, some scholars have different voices. They raised their doubts from three main problems shown in the hotline. In some cases, scholars find out that community officers' pressure increases sharply, and the cost of managing the hotline has got higher. Last year, 4.5 million appeals were resolved, and the number is still rising. It takes 1,500 operators just to answer the calls. Meanwhile, too much unreasonable requests have appeared, which crowded out the reasonable ones. Correspondingly, the government has problems in performance appraisal. Taking responsible rate, resolution rate, and the satisfaction rate as evaluation standards sometimes makes the grassroots officials struggle in unreasonable demands or make excessive compensation because performance appraisal is directly related to officials' promotion. Therefore, some scholars pointed out that the hotline needs supervision mechanism. For example, some citizens who made unreasonable claims should be added to the credit list with which the government can filter the claims. On this basis, I would like to put forward the topic of this report, analyzing the hotline from the perspective of commons and summarize its ideas for improvement. To begin with, we find out that the hotline is a traditional commons. Ostrom once pointed out that common pool resources is non-exclusive, competitive, and renewable within a certain range. Due to the individual rational choice, people will overuse the commons without supervision. As a public service, citizens' call to the hotline is not exclusive. On the other hand, calling hotline will affect other citizens' experience of use, which suggests it is competitive. Also, the hotline is permanent open to the public, so obviously the government hotline has the nature of commons. Furthermore, in this case, the tragedy of the commons appeared as told in theory. Olson once maintained that a collection of rational people may not lead to an optimal common goal. In this case, the cost of making a call is small, while the potential benefit of the caller is high, so the demand overwhelms the supply. Some citizens occupied the hotline with unreasonable requests, which crowds out the space of other citizens. So the tragedy in hearing public voices and the response immediately is a typical tragedy of possession. To solve such a classic problem, it is useful to review the theoretical thinking on commons governance. Ostrom once presented a lot of instructive cases in her book Governing the Commons. Villages in Swiss established an association to manage the grassland. People in Japan created a delegates meeting to allocate and patrol the collective land. Farmers in Spain elected a count and a few committees to schedule water collection. In the above cases, we find that people who successfully manage public resources have answered these three questions in commons governance: how to add exclusivity into the commons, how to balance the cost and the benefits, how to supervise and punish those who break the rules. While reviewing the literature, we find that the policy improvements made by the Chinese government and scholars are similar to the commons governance. Many approaches fit the above 3 points. To add exclusivity to the hotline, scholars suggest classifying people's claims. Depending on the meaning conveyed by the course, they can be divided into consultancy, suggestion, report, complaint, and demand. Thus, the related departments can distinguish the unreasonable calls from the reasonable ones to some extent. At the same time, the government has passed a law to stop handing government responsibilities to the community through the hotline. Analyzing from the commons perspective, the operators are able to exclude a few people and delineate the hotline's boundaries after these changes. To control the cost, the government is making good use of the big database generated by the hotline. Since hearing public voices and the response immediately costs too much, the government will work towards solving problems before the public voices. Through the big data, relevant departments gain the ability to analyze and locate the demands. The government is even preparing to create a map of people's livelihood, which reflects the pattern of popular demand in various areas, so that local government can promoting holistic governance. The pressure and costs borne by this public resource are then reduced if the government is proactive in identifying problems. And lastly, to supervise illegal acts, scholars suggest adopting a credit system to decrease unreasonable claims. People who make totally unreasonable requests will be listed with lower credit scores. Government can reject their calls and ignore their evaluations if the case is too serious. Ostrom once pointed out that the punishment in governing the commons should be ranked. First-time offenders may only receive a small penalty, but repeated violations cause strict penalties. Scholars' suggestions are a good example of this thinking, which shows the importance that government placed on the rules. In conclusion, we want to say that those methods are still based on current information technology. From related research, we find out that Beijing government is trying to upgrade its big data technology to analyze the possible demands. This allows the government to resolve conflicts before the hotline rings. On the other hand, with the process of digitization, Beijing can even respond to public opinion quickly on the internet. At that time, the public may be able to communicate with government at all levels, and Beijing's urban governance will be flatter. That's all for my presentation. Thank you for listening, and welcome to discuss with me.